Introduction. Imagine a world where a single species rose from obscurity to rule the planet, not through claws or strength, but through stories, myths, and imagination. What if everything you know about human history is a fragile web of beliefs? In this captivating summary of Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, we'll journey from our ape-like ancestors to the brink of godlike futures, uncovering shocking truths about agriculture's curse, money's illusions, and the forces shaping our destiny. Buckle up, this isn't just history, it's a mirror to your own life. Stick around till the end to discover if we're truly progressing or heading toward our own undoing. What makes Homo sapiens so special? Why did we rise above the millions of other species that once roamed the earth? Why do we tell stories, build empires, worship gods, and shape the world in ways no other creature has? In Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari takes us on a breathtaking journey through time, unraveling the mysteries of our past, from the moment early humans first picked up a tool to the digital revolutions of today. He reveals the unseen forces that have shaped our destiny. It's a story of power, survival, and imagination, of how myths, money, and nations exist only because we collectively believe in them. But beneath the triumphs of civilization lies a haunting question. Have we truly progressed? Did agriculture enslave us more than it freed us? Has capitalism made us happier, or simply more restless? And as we stand on the brink of genetic engineering and artificial intelligence, are we about to rewrite what it means to be human? This book is not just history, it's a mirror. It forces us to ask, who are we, and where are we going? The answers may change the way you see the world forever. Let's begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. An animal of no significance. Around 13.8 billion years ago, the universe came into existence, filled with energy, matter, space, and time. Over billions of years, stars formed, galaxies took shape, and among them, a small planet called Earth was born. On this planet, a complex process of chemical reactions led to the emergence of life. For nearly 4 billion years, life evolved from tiny single-celled organisms into an extraordinary variety of plants and animals. Among them was a group of large-brained primates that walked on two legs, part of a family known as the great apes. For millions of years, they lived like any other animal, surviving in the wild, hunting, and gathering food. For most of their existence, these primates were unremarkable. They had no special tools, no advanced abilities, and no significant impact on their surroundings. They were just another species in Earth's vast ecosystem. Over time, several types of humans evolved. Some, like the Neanderthals, were strong and well adapted to cold environments. Others, like Homo erectus, survived for nearly 2 million years across large parts of the world. These human species coexisted, each with their own way of life. There was nothing to suggest that one would rise above the rest and reshape the planet. Humans were not at the top of the food chain. For millions of years, they lived in fear of larger, faster, and stronger predators. Lions, tigers, and other wild animals ruled the land, while humans had to rely on their intelligence and cooperation to stay alive. Their position in the middle of the food chain meant they had to be careful and strategic, avoiding dangerous predators while hunting smaller animals for food. Unlike apex predators such as lions or wolves, who took millions of years to develop their hunting skills and instincts, humans rose to dominance in a very short time. This rapid rise created instability, as they had not yet adapted to their new position of power. Despite their growing success, humans were physically weak compared to many animals. They did not have sharp claws, strong muscles, or fast reflexes. They could not fly, run at great speeds, or camouflage themselves to escape predators. If left alone, a human stood little chance against a lion or a bear. However, their strength lay in numbers. When they worked together, they could achieve what no single individual could. By forming groups, they could protect themselves, hunt more effectively, and share valuable knowledge that helped them survive in difficult environments. The world had seen many dominant species before humans. Dinosaurs, for example, ruled the Earth for more than 150 million years before disappearing. Other species had also risen and fallen, unable to adapt to changes in the environment. Several human species had already gone extinct, leaving only one behind. There was no certainty that this last surviving species would last much longer. They were still at the mercy of nature, vulnerable to droughts, predators, and food shortages. For thousands of years, these humans continued to live simple lives, moving in small groups, hunting animals, gathering fruits, and seeking shelter in caves or under trees. They had no cities, no laws, and no organized religion. They followed nature's rhythm, adjusting their lives to the changing seasons and the availability of resources. Their survival depended entirely on their ability to work together, make tools, and understand the behavior of the animals they hunted. At this point, there was still nothing extraordinary about them. They were just another type of animal, adapting to their environment like countless species before them. But something was about to change, something that would separate them from every other creature that had ever lived. This species, despite its ordinary appearance, was about to take a path that no other animal had taken before. It would not be its strength or speed that made the difference. It would be something far more powerful, something invisible but unstoppable, the ability to imagine things that did not exist. This single change would alter the fate of the world forever. Chapter 2. The Tree of Knowledge. Around 70,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. A species of primates that had lived for hundreds of thousands of years without making much impact suddenly began doing things no other creature had ever done before. Small groups of these primates started working together in large numbers, sharing complex ideas and changing the world around them in ways that seemed impossible. They began hunting bigger animals, settling in new lands, and creating tools and weapons far more advanced than anything seen before. Unlike other species that relied purely on physical strength or instinct, these creatures had discovered something far more powerful, the ability to think in ways no other animal could. At first glance, they were not much different from other members of their family, such as Neanderthals. They had similar bodies, similar brains, and lived in similar environments. Yet, for some reason, only this particular species developed a unique way of communicating, one that allowed them to share ideas that went beyond the immediate present. They could talk about what happened yesterday, plan for tomorrow, and describe things that didn't even exist. They could tell stories. The ability to create and believe in shared stories changed everything. It allowed large groups of people to cooperate, even if they had never met before. Other animals, such as chimpanzees, could only work together in small groups where they personally knew every member. If a group grew too large, trust broke down, and the group split apart. But these new primates could do something extraordinary. They could unite thousands of individuals under a common idea. They could believe in the same gods, obey the same rules, and follow the same leaders, not because they had met them personally, but because they all believed in the same shared story. This was the secret behind their sudden rise to power. They could organize massive hunts, defend their land more effectively, and even outcompete stronger and smarter rivals like the Neanderthals. Over time, they became the dominant species on the planet, not because they were the strongest, but because they were the best at working together. One of the most powerful tools they developed was the ability to create myths. These myths were not just stories about gods or spirits. They were ideas that allowed people to form larger and more stable societies. For example, if thousands of people believed in the same set of laws, they could live and work together peacefully, even if they were strangers. If they believed in the same trade system, they could exchange goods and services without needing to trust each other personally. If they believed in the same leaders, they could follow orders and build vast civilizations. This ability to create shared beliefs also allowed them to adapt quickly to new environments. While other animals had to wait for slow genetic changes to evolve, these primates could simply invent new customs, rules, and technologies. If they moved to a colder climate, they didn't need to wait for their bodies to grow thicker fur. They could make clothes. If they faced a dangerous predator, they didn't need to evolve stronger muscles. They could create weapons. This made them the most flexible and adaptable creatures on Earth. As they spread across the world, they encountered new challenges, but they always had the same advantage: the ability to share knowledge and work together on a massive scale. This ability was based entirely on their imagination. They could create complex social structures, economic systems, and even moral codes, all based on things that existed only in their minds. Unlike rivers, mountains, or trees, which were real and unchangeable, these imagined realities could be reshaped whenever necessary. If one belief system stopped working, they could replace it with another. The rise of these primates was not the result of slow biological evolution, but rather the rapid spread of ideas. Their strength came not from their bodies, but from their ability to create and believe in things that had no physical form. This was their greatest weapon and the reason they eventually came to dominate the planet. Chapter 3. A day in the life of Adam and Eve. Early humans, like Adam and Eve, lived in small groups, moving from place to place in search of food. They hunted animals, gathered fruits, nuts, and roots, and relied on their knowledge of nature to survive. Their lives were shaped by the environment, the seasons, and the availability of resources. Unlike modern societies, they had no fixed homes, no governments, and no written laws. Yet, they thrived for thousands of years. Food was not always scarce. Many hunter-gatherers lived in rich environments where they could find plenty to eat. They ate a wide variety of foods, making their diet more diverse and nutritious than that of later agricultural societies. Hunting was not always necessary, as plants, berries, and nuts often provided enough sustenance. When they did hunt, they used tools like spears and bows and worked together to bring down large animals. Meat was shared among the group, ensuring everyone had enough to eat. Daily life was filled with activities that required skill and cooperation. People made tools from stone and wood, crafted baskets and clothing, and built simple shelters when needed. They communicated using language, which helped them share knowledge about food sources, dangers, and survival techniques. Storytelling was an important part of their culture, allowing them to pass down information from one generation to the next. Contrary to the idea that early humans lived in constant fear of wild animals, they were often the top predators in their environment. While they had to be cautious of large animals like lions and bears, their intelligence and ability to work together made them highly successful hunters. They also knew how to avoid danger by reading animal tracks and understanding the behavior of different species. Social bonds were strong, and cooperation was essential. People relied on each other for protection, food, and care. Unlike later agricultural societies, where class divisions and private property created social hierarchies, hunter-gatherers lived in relatively equal groups. There were no kings or rulers, decisions were made together, and resources were shared. This way of life allowed them to avoid many of the problems that later civilizations faced, such as extreme poverty and oppression. Their understanding of nature was deep. They knew which plants were edible, which had medicinal properties, and which were poisonous. They observed the movements of animals and learned how to track them. They understood the seasons and the best times to gather certain foods. This knowledge was passed down through generations, helping them survive in different environments, from forests to deserts. The introduction of agriculture changed everything. People began to settle in one place, grow crops, and domesticate animals. This led to the rise of villages, towns, and cities. While farming allowed for larger populations, it also introduced new challenges. People had to work harder than before, planting and harvesting crops, protecting their fields from pests, and storing food for the future. Their diet became less varied, leading to health problems. Farming also led to social divisions, as some people accumulated wealth and power while others worked in the fields. Hunter-gatherers lived in balance with nature, taking what they needed and moving on, allowing ecosystems to recover. They did not overhunt animals or destroy forests. When they encountered other groups, they sometimes traded, exchanged knowledge, or formed alliances. At times, there were conflicts, but large-scale wars were rare. Their way of life lasted for tens of thousands of years, far longer than any civilization in history. The shift to farming and modern society brought many advancements, but it also came with challenges that early humans never faced. Understanding how they lived helps us see how human history unfolded and why the world is the way it is today. Chapter 4. The Flood. Around 70,000 years ago, humans began spreading out of Africa, moving across vast lands and into new environments. As they traveled, they encountered animals that had never seen humans before. These creatures had no natural fear of people, making them easy targets for hunting. This led to a wave of extinctions that forever changed the ecosystems of the planet. Wherever humans arrived, animals vanished. In Australia, a land filled with giant creatures, humans appeared around 45,000 years ago. Before their arrival, massive marsupial lions, giant kangaroos, and huge flightless birds roamed freely. But within a few thousand years of humans settling there, nearly all large species disappeared. These giant animals, which had survived for millions of years, were suddenly wiped out. It wasn't because of climate change. Australia's climate had remained stable for a long time. The most likely reason was that humans hunted these creatures faster than they could reproduce. Once the large animals were gone, the ecosystem collapsed. Smaller animals and plants that depended on the balance of nature were also affected. The entire landscape of Australia changed forever. A similar story unfolded in the Americas. Humans arrived there around 16,000 years ago, and soon after, giant sloths, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and other large species vanished. These animals had survived previous ice ages and climate shifts, but they could not survive humans. The pattern was clear. Whenever people entered a new land, the largest animals disappeared. This was not just a coincidence, it was a repeated event across the world. The reason humans were so deadly was not their strength but their intelligence. Unlike other predators, humans did not rely on physical power alone. They used fire to change landscapes, developed better hunting tools, and worked together in large groups. They could set traps, use teamwork, and learn from their mistakes. In contrast, large animals evolved slowly and could not adapt quickly enough to this new kind of predator. They had no defense against organized hunting strategies. The story was the same in island regions. When humans reached New Zealand, they found a land filled with enormous birds called moas. These birds, some taller than a man, had no natural enemies. With no need to escape predators, they had lost the ability to fly. But when humans arrived, they became easy prey. Within a few centuries, every single species of moa was extinct. Similar events happened in Madagascar, Hawaii, and many other isolated islands. The destruction of wildlife was not deliberate or planned. Early humans did not understand that killing too many animals could lead to their extinction. They saw an endless supply of food and took what they needed to survive. But with no way to control their hunting, entire species disappeared one after another. The loss of these animals had lasting effects. In some places, the disappearance of large herbivores changed the growth of forests and grasslands. Without mammoths to clear trees, some regions became densely covered in vegetation. Without large predators, smaller species multiplied in unexpected ways. Every extinction altered the balance of nature, shaping the environment in ways no one could predict. This process continues even today. The destruction of animal species, whether by overhunting or habitat loss, has been happening for thousands of years. Humans have always been a force of change, often without realizing the full consequences of their actions. Many of the world's most unique creatures disappeared long before modern technology, cities, or industries. The first major wave of extinction was not caused by pollution or machines, but by the intelligence and adaptability of humans themselves. Chapter 5. History's Biggest Fraud. For millions of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, moving through forests, plains, and coasts, gathering fruits, nuts, and edible plants while hunting wild animals. They had varied diets, spent only a few hours a day searching for food, and lived in small, close-knit groups. Their mobility protected them from diseases, and their lifestyle allowed them to avoid the dangers of overpopulation and food shortages. But around 10,000 years ago, something changed. Humans began planting wheat, barley, rice, and other crops, marking the beginning of agriculture. It seemed like a great step forward, a revolution that allowed people to settle in one place, build villages, and ensure a steady food supply. But in reality, this shift led to a series of problems that reshaped human life in ways no one could have predicted. Farming required people to stay in one location and work the land tirelessly. Unlike foragers, who moved on when food became scarce, farmers had to protect their fields from pests, droughts, and floods. They spent long hours planting, weeding, and harvesting, often working harder than their ancestors ever did. Their diet became less diverse, relying on a few staple crops instead of the wide variety of foods foragers once enjoyed. Malnutrition, disease, and physical strain became common. Yet, people kept farming because it allowed their populations to grow. More food meant more children, and more children meant more workers to tend the fields. As food production increased, so did competition for land and resources. People built permanent settlements, leading to the formation of villages, towns, and eventually cities. But with these larger populations came inequality. In hunter-gatherer societies, everyone contributed to the group's survival, and wealth was difficult to accumulate because there were no permanent homes or storage systems. With farming, landowners and rulers emerged, controlling surplus food and distributing it as they saw fit. Some became powerful, while others struggled to survive, creating social hierarchies that had never existed before. The dependence on crops also meant vulnerability. If a wheat field was destroyed by pests or a drought, an entire community could face starvation. Unlike foragers, who could move to new areas and find food elsewhere, farmers were trapped in their settlements, forced to endure famine or fight neighboring villages for resources. Wars over land became common, and the need to protect fields and grain stores led to the rise of organized armies and complex political systems. Farming also changed the relationship between humans and animals. In earlier times, humans hunted wild animals when necessary, but with agriculture, they began domesticating them for labor and food. Cows, sheep, and chickens were bred in large numbers, leading to the rise of livestock farming. This not only increased the spread of diseases but also placed additional demands on the environment, as forests were cleared to create grazing lands. The balance that had existed between humans and nature for thousands of years was disrupted. Despite these difficulties, farming continued to spread. Once a society became dependent on agriculture, it was almost impossible to return to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Villages turned into towns, towns turned into cities, and civilizations flourished. Writing, mathematics, and organized religions developed as a way to manage large populations and maintain order. The belief that farming was necessary for human progress became deeply ingrained, even though it created new forms of suffering. The agricultural revolution was not planned. No one set out to domesticate wheat and settle in villages. Instead, small changes over time led humans down an irreversible path. Wheat did not serve humans. Instead, humans ended up serving wheat, devoting their lives to its growth and survival. What had started as a way to secure food eventually led to larger populations, social divisions, wars, and environmental destruction. Humans did not choose this path with full awareness of where it would lead. They simply adapted to each new challenge, unaware that they were building a world far more complicated and difficult than the one they had left behind. Chapter 6. Building Pyramids. For thousands of years, humans lived in small bands, bound together by kinship and immediate survival needs. But as societies grew, new structures were needed to maintain order. The human ability to believe in shared myths led to the rise of large-scale cooperation, which allowed kingdoms, empires, and entire civilizations to emerge. These myths were not mere stories. They were the foundation upon which laws, social hierarchies, and entire economic systems were built. People obeyed rulers not just because of physical force, but because they believed in the legitimacy of the system that governed them. The Egyptian pyramids stand as a perfect example of how large groups of people work together, driven by a shared belief in something greater than themselves. The construction of these massive structures required years of labor, careful planning, and the coordination of thousands of workers. What made this possible was the belief that the pharaoh was a divine being chosen by the gods. Farmers, stonecutters, and artisans did not need to understand engineering or architecture. Their trust in the religious and political order was enough to make them dedicate their lives to these grand projects. Religion and political institutions have played a crucial role in human cooperation. Without belief in a common system, humans struggle to organize beyond small groups. Even today, systems such as nations, corporations, and legal structures exist because people collectively accept them as real. A dollar bill, for example, is just a piece of paper. It holds value only because people believe in the economic system that assigns it worth. Similarly, social hierarchies and institutions continue to function as long as people accept them as legitimate. In ancient times, caste systems and class structures were reinforced through myths that made them appear natural and unchangeable. In India, for instance, the caste system was justified through religious beliefs, ensuring that people remained in their assigned roles. In medieval Europe, the idea of the divine right of kings convinced people that monarchs ruled by the will of God, making rebellion not just illegal but sinful. Such beliefs ensured stability in society, even when they led to inequality. Writing played a key role in strengthening these structures. Early human societies relied on memory to store information, but as communities expanded, this was no longer practical. Writing allowed rulers to collect taxes, record laws, and maintain detailed accounts of economic transactions. It enabled empires to manage vast territories by keeping track of resources and populations. Bureaucracies became essential in administering large states, ensuring that laws were enforced and goods were distributed efficiently. One of the most significant effects of these belief systems was the rise of social stratification. Kings, priests, and nobles occupied the top levels of society, while farmers and laborers remained at the bottom. This hierarchy was not based on biology but on shared agreements and institutional support. Even though these divisions were artificial, they became deeply ingrained over time, making them seem natural despite the inequalities they created. Large-scale human cooperation allowed for astonishing advancements. Without shared myths, the development of trade networks, cities, and complex governments would have been impossible. People from different backgrounds could work together because they trusted in the same laws, currencies, and political systems. The ability to cooperate with strangers on a massive scale is one of the most powerful traits of humankind. From the pyramids of Egypt to modern corporations and nation-states, the same principles remain at work. People follow rules, perform their duties, and contribute to the system because they believe in the structures that govern them. These beliefs are not eternal. They change over time as new ideologies and institutions replace old ones. What remains constant is the ability of humans to create and sustain large societies based on collective imagination. Chapter 7. Memory Overload. For most of history, humans relied on their brains to store and recall vast amounts of information. Early societies functioned through oral traditions, where stories, laws, and customs were passed down through generations by word of mouth. Elders, priests, and storytellers played crucial roles in maintaining the collective knowledge of their people. However, as human societies grew larger and more complex, memory alone was no longer enough. The need to store and process increasing amounts of data led to the invention of new systems to record and organize information. The first major breakthrough came with writing. The earliest known writing systems emerged in Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE, primarily to track economic transactions. Farmers, merchants, and rulers needed a reliable way to record trade, debts, and laws. Simple symbols were carved into clay tablets, representing goods, numbers, and names. Over time, these symbols evolved into full writing systems, allowing people to store information far beyond their personal memory. Writing became a tool of power. Those who controlled written records, scribes, officials, and priests, held significant influence over society. Laws were no longer subject to interpretation by memory. They were fixed in written form, creating a more structured and stable system of governance. With writing in place, humans could build increasingly sophisticated institutions. Governments could tax people more efficiently by keeping written records of land ownership and transactions. Religious organizations could spread their beliefs across vast territories through sacred texts. Kings and emperors could issue decrees that would be preserved for generations, ensuring they will continue even after their death. Writing also made possible the organization of large armies and bureaucracies, as commanders and officials could follow written orders without needing direct face-to-face communication. But writing alone was not enough. As civilizations expanded, managing vast amounts of written information became a challenge. The invention of numbers and mathematical systems provided a solution. Early societies developed counting systems to manage trade, land distribution, and taxation. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, people used complex mathematical records to track harvests, allocate resources, and predict agricultural cycles. The ability to store numerical data allowed societies to plan for the future in ways that would have been impossible through memory alone. The need for more efficient information management led to the development of bureaucracies. In ancient China, government officials kept detailed records of population numbers, tax collections, and military supplies. The Roman Empire maintained extensive archives to oversee its vast territories. Officials relied on written reports, census data, and legal documents to govern effectively. These bureaucracies allowed large empires to function smoothly despite their size and complexity. Without written records and organized systems, such large-scale governance would have been impossible. Religion also benefited from written records. In the past, spiritual teachings were passed down through oral traditions, often changing over time. The introduction of written scriptures created fixed religious doctrines that could be spread across vast regions. Religious leaders used texts to unify believers and maintain consistency in their teachings. Whether in the form of holy books, legal codes, or philosophical treatises, writing helped establish enduring traditions that shaped human culture for centuries. As societies advanced, new technologies emerged to handle even greater amounts of information. The printing press, invented in the 15th century, revolutionized knowledge storage and distribution. Before its invention, books were copied by hand, making them rare and expensive. The printing press made books widely available, accelerating the spread of ideas, science, and education. Knowledge was no longer restricted to elites. Ordinary people could now access written works, leading to an explosion of literacy and learning. Today, information management has reached unprecedented levels. Digital storage, computers, and the Internet have made it possible to store and process vast amounts of data instantly. Governments, corporations, and individuals rely on digital systems to manage their lives. Chapter 8. There is no justice in history. Throughout history, human societies have created and maintained vast inequalities, often without realizing it. The differences in power, wealth, and status between people are not based on natural laws but on myths and shared beliefs. These inequalities have shaped civilizations for thousands of years, and even when people try to remove them, new forms of inequality emerge. Social hierarchies are not a recent invention. Thousands of years ago, some people became rulers while others became subjects, and these divisions hardened over time. Often, a small group of people found ways to keep power within their families. They claimed that their position was given by gods, tradition, or nature itself. These stories made people believe that inequality was normal and unchangeable. For example, in medieval Europe, kings and nobles ruled over peasants because they were told it was their divine right. In India, the caste system decided people's lives before they were even born. The lowest castes were given the hardest jobs, while the highest enjoyed privileges without questioning the system. Even when new empires and governments replaced old ones, inequality remained. People who were powerful in one system often found ways to stay powerful in the next. In the United States, when slavery was abolished, new laws were made to keep black people poor and powerless. Segregation and discrimination ensured that, even without chains, they were still trapped. Similarly, when European colonial rulers left Africa and Asia, the new leaders were often from the same elite groups that had benefited under colonial rule. The main reason these inequalities last so long is that people believe in them. No single person or group forces an entire society to follow the rules. Instead, people grow up believing that social divisions are natural and necessary. Education, religion, and cultural traditions all play a role in keeping these ideas alive. From childhood, people are taught their place in the world. A child born into a poor family learns different lessons than a child born into a rich one. They meet different people, live in different places, and have different opportunities. This makes inequality seem like fate rather than something created by human decisions. Language also helps maintain these divisions. Some societies have even created separate ways of speaking for different classes of people. The way a person talks can immediately show their status, making it difficult for them to move up in society. In many countries, certain accents and dialects are seen as intelligent or powerful, while others are treated as low class. This simple difference in speech can decide who gets a good job and who is ignored. One of the biggest factors in social inequality is gender. Almost every society has placed men in positions of power while limiting the rights of women. Some historians have argued that physical strength gave men an advantage, but this does not fully explain why these inequalities lasted for thousands of years. In fact, in many early societies, women played crucial roles as leaders, warriors, and healers. Over time, however, men created systems that kept themselves in control. Women were denied education, kept out of politics, and forced to obey strict rules. Even when societies became more advanced, these inequalities remained. Today, in many countries, women still earn less than men for the same work and face restrictions in legal rights, political power, and personal freedom. Social inequalities are not permanent, but they do not disappear on their own. Throughout history, people have fought against discrimination and unfair systems. Revolutions, protests, and new ideas have led to change. But each time an old system is removed, a new one takes its place. People who benefit from inequality find ways to protect their status, often by creating new stories to justify it. While many societies have improved the lives of their people, true equality has never been achieved. Despite all the progress in science, technology, and human rights, inequality continues in different forms. Wealth is now measured in money rather than land, but the gap between the rich and the poor is still enormous. Countries that claim to be democratic still give more power to the wealthy and well-connected. Even as new laws try to promote fairness, Those in power often find ways to work around them. Chapter 9. The Arrow of History. For thousands of years, humans lived in small, scattered groups, separated by mountains, rivers, and vast distances. These groups had their own languages, customs, and beliefs, rarely interacting with outsiders. But over time, something changed. The world began moving toward unity. People who had never met before started sharing goods, ideas, and cultures. This process did not happen by accident. It was driven by powerful forces that shaped history in ways no one could have predicted. One of the strongest forces was money. In ancient times, people relied on barter, exchanging goods directly. But this system was complicated and inefficient. If a farmer had wheat but needed shoes, he had to find a shoemaker who wanted wheat. Money solved this problem by providing a common medium of exchange. It allowed people to trade with strangers, building economic networks that stretched across continents. Gold and silver coins became universally accepted, making it easier for merchants to do business, even with those who spoke different languages or worshipped different gods. Over time, money helped connect distant civilizations, weaving them into a single economic web. Another force that shaped unity was empire. Throughout history, rulers expanded their territories, conquering new lands and bringing diverse peoples under one government. Empires often ruled with violence, crushing resistance and forcing people to obey their laws. But they also built roads, established legal systems, and created common languages. The Roman Empire, for example, controlled vast lands across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. It brought order to places that had once been divided by endless tribal conflicts. Even when empires collapsed, they left behind structures that continued to shape society. The laws and customs they introduced often survived long after the conquerors disappeared. Religion also played a major role in bringing people together. In early human history, religions were mostly local, tied to specific tribes or regions. But as civilizations expanded, religions evolved to reach wider audiences. Instead of worshipping gods that belonged only to one tribe, people started following universal beliefs that could apply to anyone. Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism spread across multiple continents, teaching ideas that connected millions of people. These religions not only provided spiritual meaning but also helped establish moral codes that made cooperation easier. A merchant from one land could trust a trader from another land simply because they shared the same faith. Religious institutions also created vast networks of education, hospitals, and charity, further linking human societies. Science and knowledge contributed to this growing unity as well. In the past, most knowledge was passed down through tradition, and different cultures had their own ways of understanding the world. But as trade and empire expanded, so did the exchange of ideas. Greek philosophy influenced Islamic scholars, who then preserved and expanded that knowledge, passing it to medieval Europe. Mathematics from India, papermaking from China, and navigation techniques from the Arab world all spread across vast regions, making progress possible on a global scale. As humans learned more, they developed a shared understanding of nature, medicine, and technology. Despite all these connections, the movement toward unity was not always smooth. Wars, revolutions, and conflicts constantly reshaped societies. Some people resisted new ideas, while others embraced them. But the overall direction of history remained the same. The world kept moving toward integration, with economies, governments, and belief systems becoming increasingly linked. Even today, this process continues. Modern technology, trade, and global communication have made humanity more connected than ever before. Borders still exist, and cultural differences remain, but the forces that began shaping unity thousands of years ago are still at work. The journey that started with scattered tribes is now leading toward a world where humans, for better or worse, are part of a single interwoven system. Chapter 10. The Scent of Money. Money is the most universal and efficient system of mutual trust ever devised. It allows strangers to cooperate on a massive scale, uniting people who have never met and may never meet. Unlike barter, which depends on the direct exchange of goods and services, money functions because people collectively believe in its value. A dollar bill or a gold coin has no intrinsic worth. It is only valuable because everyone agrees it is. This shared trust gives money immense power, shaping societies, economies, and even empires. Long ago, trade was based on barter, where people exchanged one good for another. This system worked only in simple economies where communities were small and people knew each other. A farmer who had wheat might trade with a shoemaker who needed grain in exchange for a pair of shoes. But problems arose when the shoemaker did not want wheat or when the value of different goods became difficult to measure. A system was needed where all goods and services could be exchanged using a common measure. That is how money was born. At first, money took the form of rare and useful commodities, such as barley, cattle, or salt. These items had value beyond trade. People could eat barley, use cattle for farming, or preserve food with salt. Over time, metals like gold and silver replaced these commodities because they were durable, easy to carry, and could be melted into different forms. Coins stamped by kings and governments further strengthened trust in money. People accepted these coins not because of the metal alone, but because they believed in the power of the ruler who guaranteed their worth. Yet carrying large amounts of gold and silver was inconvenient and risky. To solve this, merchants and bankers created promissory notes, paper money that represented real wealth stored elsewhere. These notes were easier to carry, and as long as people trusted the banks or governments that issued them, they were as good as gold. Paper money changed economies forever. Now wealth was no longer tied to physical objects. It existed as an idea backed only by trust. This led to the rise of powerful banking systems, where banks did not just store money but also created it by lending more than they physically possessed. The expansion of trade and empires made money even more influential. European explorers traveling to distant lands needed a way to conduct business with different cultures. Instead of bartering, they used gold and silver coins, which had universal appeal. When colonial powers took control of new territories, they imposed their monetary systems, making local economies dependent on their rule. Money was not just an economic tool, it became a means of control and influence. The modern era introduced new forms of money that were even further removed from physical commodities. Today, most money exists only as numbers in digital accounts. Credit cards, online transactions, and stock markets move enormous sums of wealth across the world without a single coin or bill changing hands. Despite this shift, the principle remains the same. Money has value only because people trust it. If confidence in a currency collapses, its worth disappears overnight. The real power of money lies in its ability to bridge gaps between people, cultures, and nations. Two individuals who have nothing in common, different languages, religions, or customs, can still trade if they believe in the same currency. Unlike laws or governments, which apply only within specific borders, money operates across all human divisions. It connects the world through trade, finance, and investment, making it one of the most unifying forces in history. However, money is not neutral. It influences human behavior, shaping how people think, work, and interact. It drives ambition, sparks innovation, and fuels economic growth. But it can also lead to inequality, greed, and exploitation. The ability of money to dictate human actions shows how deeply it is woven into the fabric of society. It is not just a medium of exchange. It is a system of belief that controls the world in ways both seen and unseen. Chapter 11. Imperial Visions. Empires have played a crucial role in shaping the world for thousands of years. Powerful states conquered lands, imposed their laws, and spread their cultures. They built roads, cities, and institutions that connected people across vast distances. Some of these empires lasted for centuries, while others crumbled quickly. Despite their differences, all empires followed a similar pattern. They expanded through military conquest, controlled diverse populations, and justified their rule through ideology, religion, or the promise of progress. The Roman Empire, for example, started as a small city-state but eventually ruled much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. It maintained power not just by force but by creating a system that benefited many of its subjects. Roads and trade routes allowed goods, ideas, and cultures to mix. People under Roman rule could adopt Roman customs, speak Latin, and even become citizens. This helped create a shared identity, making the empire stronger. However, no empire lasts forever. As Rome expanded, it became harder to manage. Corruption, economic troubles, and external invasions eventually led to its downfall. A similar pattern occurred in other empires. The Persian Empire, one of the largest in history, controlled a vast territory from India to Greece. Instead of forcing people to follow one way of life, Persian rulers allowed different cultures and religions to exist under their rule. This tolerance helped them maintain stability. The Mongol Empire, led by Genghis Khan, took a different approach. It grew through brutal military campaigns but also encouraged trade and communication across Asia and Europe. Under Mongol rule, merchants could travel safely along the Silk Road, leading to an exchange of knowledge and goods between different civilizations. The British Empire expanded across continents, using a combination of military power and economic influence. It justified its rule by claiming to bring civilization, progress, and modern institutions to the lands it controlled. Railways, schools, and legal systems were introduced, but often in a way that benefited the British more than the local populations. Resistance against colonial rule grew over time, leading to independence movements and the eventual decline of European empires in the 20th century. The spread of empire was not just about military conquest. Ideas, religions, and languages traveled along with armies. Christianity spread through the Roman and Spanish empires. Islam expanded through the Arab and Ottoman empires. The English language, once spoken only on a small island, became global because of British and American influence. Even when empires disappeared, they left lasting effects on the world. Borders drawn by colonial rulers shaped modern nations. Legal systems, government structures, and economic models established during imperial rule continued long after independence. Empires often justified their rule by claiming they were bringing progress or uniting people under a higher cause. Some rulers believed they had a divine right to rule. Others promoted ideas of racial or cultural superiority. These beliefs allowed small groups of people to control vast populations. However, over time, these justifications became weaker. As societies advanced, more people began questioning imperial rule. Nationalism, democracy, and human rights movements challenged the idea that one group should dominate another. This led to the fall of many empires and the rise of independent nations. Despite their decline, the influence of empires is still visible today. Many of the world's major religions, languages, and political systems spread through imperial expansion. Global trade, technology, and cultural exchange owe much to the connections built by empires. Even modern international organizations, such as the United Nations, function in ways similar to old empires by bringing different nations together under common rules and values. The history of empires shows that power is never permanent. It shifts from one civilization to another, shaped by military strength, economic growth, and ideological beliefs. Empires rise by creating systems that bring people together, but they fall when those systems become too difficult to maintain. Understanding this history helps explain how the modern world was built. Chapter 12. The Law of Religion. For most of history, humans lived in small groups, each following its own customs and beliefs. But as societies grew and people from different backgrounds had to live and work together, they needed something greater to unite them. Religion became the invisible glue holding large populations together. It provided common laws, moral codes, and shared stories that helped strangers trust one another. Without this shared belief system, large kingdoms and empires would have struggled to exist. Unlike earlier tribal gods, who were mainly concerned with local matters like the success of a hunt or the health of crops, new religions offered universal rules that applied to everyone, regardless of where they lived. These religions did not only explain the mysteries of the world, but also told people how to live, what was right and wrong, and what consequences awaited them after death. This belief in divine justice gave people a reason to obey rulers and laws, even when no one was watching. Some of the earliest major religions, such as Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam, spread widely because they offered clear guidance on how to live a good life. They gave people a sense of purpose beyond their daily struggles and promised rewards in the afterlife for those who followed their teachings. These religions thrived not just because they provided comfort, but because they created strong communities. A shared belief in one God or a set of moral rules allowed millions of people to identify with one another, forming civilizations that lasted for centuries. At the same time, religion became a powerful tool for rulers. Kings and emperors often claimed that their authority came from the gods, making it easier to control their subjects. In return, religious leaders gained influence over political matters, sometimes even deciding who would rule. This partnership between religion and politics shaped much of history. It justified wars, guided the creation of laws, and helped rulers maintain order. However, as empires expanded, They had to govern people who followed different gods and customs. This created a challenge. How could an empire stay strong if its people did not share the same religious beliefs? Some rulers forced their subjects to convert to a single faith, but this often led to rebellions and instability. Others took a different approach, allowing people to keep their own gods as long as they respected the empire's laws. This tolerance helped empires last longer by preventing unnecessary conflict. Over time, religions themselves changed. Many beliefs that were once taken as absolute truth had to adapt to new realities. Some religious leaders insisted on strict obedience to old traditions, while others encouraged reform, leading to the rise of new religious movements. The struggle between tradition and change has continued throughout history, shaping the modern world in unexpected ways. Even as science and technology advanced, religion did not disappear. It remained deeply woven into human society, influencing everything from politics to daily life. Many laws, moral values, and social customs still have their roots in religious teachings, even in places where religion is not officially part of the government. People continue to seek meaning in their lives through faith, and religious institutions remain powerful in many parts of the world. Religions have united people and given them hope, but they have also divided societies and led to conflicts. They have inspired great acts of kindness and fueled some of history's deadliest wars. Their power lies in their ability to shape human behavior, giving people reasons to live, fight, and die for beliefs that exist only in their minds. The way religion has influenced history is a reminder of how deeply human societies are built on shared myths and the willingness of people to believe in something greater than themselves. Chapter 13. The Secret of Success. For most of history, people believed that everything worth knowing was already known. Societies held on to ancient traditions, believing that the past contained all wisdom. But a great shift happened when some civilizations began to accept that they did not know everything. This simple realization that ignorance exists became a powerful force. It led people to explore the unknown, question old beliefs, and search for new knowledge. This shift laid the foundation for modern science and technological advancement. This new way of thinking was not just about curiosity, it was deeply tied to power. When European explorers set sail in the 15th and 16th centuries, they were not just looking for new trade routes, they were looking for knowledge. The more they understood the world, the stronger they became. Kings and queens supported these voyages because they saw a connection between discovery and wealth. If a nation could map unknown lands, understand foreign cultures, and control trade routes, it could become rich and powerful. This connection between knowledge and power led to an important alliance between science and empire. When explorers reached new lands, they studied everything: the plants, the animals, and the people. Scientists worked closely with governments and traders, using their discoveries to help their nations expand. The more a country knew, the more control it could have. This was not just about collecting information, it was about using knowledge to rule. One of the most important aspects of this process was the willingness to invest in the unknown. In the past, people only invested in things that were sure to work. But as societies began to embrace uncertainty, they started funding expeditions, scientific research, and new technologies, even when the outcome was unclear. This change allowed for rapid progress. European nations, in particular, became very successful because they were willing to spend money on experiments, hoping they would lead to future wealth. Economic systems also played a key role in this success. In earlier times, economies were based on stability. Landowners and rulers wanted to keep their wealth secure rather than take risks. But with the rise of exploration and science, a new mindset emerged. People began to believe that the economy should grow, not just stay the same. This belief led to the rise of capitalism. Banks, merchants, and investors started putting their money into new ventures, expecting that future discoveries would bring greater profits. The idea that the future could be better than the past encouraged people to take financial risks, fueling trade, colonization, and scientific progress. The relationship between science and empire became even clearer during the colonization of large parts of the world. European powers sent scientists alongside their armies, mapping territories, studying natural resources, and cataloging local customs. This information allowed them to govern more efficiently and exploit resources more effectively. Knowledge was not just about curiosity, it was a tool for domination. At the same time, people began to believe that science could solve almost any problem. Advances in medicine, engineering, and agriculture improved life in many ways. But these advances were often used for political and economic gain. Some governments and businesses focused on using science for profit rather than for the benefit of all. The success of modern economies and powerful nations was built on this continuous cycle of discovery, investment, and growth. The belief that progress was possible, combined with a willingness to embrace the unknown, created a world that changed faster than ever before. By supporting exploration, funding research, and expanding trade, societies that embraced this new mindset became dominant. They controlled land, resources, and markets, shaping the modern world. This pattern continues today. Governments, corporations, and institutions invest in scientific research, not just to understand the world but to gain advantage. The cycle of knowledge, power, and economic growth remains a driving force behind global development. Chapter 14. The Discovery of Ignorance. For most of history, people believed that they already knew everything important about the world. Religious scriptures, ancient traditions, and the wisdom of elders were thought to contain all the knowledge humans needed. Everything had an explanation. Gods controlled the rain, kings ruled by divine right, and the stars moved in perfect harmony according to cosmic plans. There was no need to search for new knowledge because the truth had already been revealed. But about 500 years ago, a new way of thinking emerged, one that admitted something revolutionary. Humans do not know everything. This realization was the foundation of what would become the modern scientific revolution. People began to doubt long-standing beliefs and instead started to observe the world with fresh eyes. Instead of relying on old texts to explain how nature worked, they conducted experiments. Instead of assuming that the Earth was at the center of the universe, they questioned what they saw in the night sky. Once humans admitted their ignorance, they began to seek answers in new ways. This curiosity led to discoveries that transformed societies. Sailors set off to explore unknown lands, no longer believing that the world was fully mapped. Mathematicians and physicists searched for laws that govern nature, no longer accepting ancient theories without question. One of the first major breakthroughs came in astronomy. For centuries, people believed that Earth was the center of the universe, with the sun, moon, and stars orbiting around it. But careful observations and mathematical calculations revealed a different picture. The Earth was not the center, it was just one planet among many circling around the sun. This discovery shook the very foundations of religious and philosophical thought. If the universe did not revolve around humans, what did that mean for humanity's place in existence? This new approach to knowledge quickly spread beyond the stars. In medicine, doctors stopped relying on ancient texts written by Greek and Roman scholars. Instead, they dissected human bodies, studied their structures, and began to understand how diseases worked. In geography, explorers realized that much of the world was still unknown. New continents were discovered, and with them, new civilizations and ways of life that Europeans had never imagined. The discovery of ignorance did not just lead to knowledge, it led to power. Those who embraced this new way of thinking gained a significant advantage. Nations that invested in scientific research and exploration became stronger and wealthier than those that did not. This shift also changed the way people viewed history and the future. In the past, history had been seen as a cycle, where societies rose and fell, repeating the same patterns endlessly. But with science and exploration, people began to believe in progress. They realized that the world was not static. It could be changed, improved, and controlled. Humans had the power to reshape their environment, cure diseases, and create new technologies that had never existed before. One of the most surprising consequences of this shift was the way it changed economies. Previously, wealth was seen as something limited. If one person became rich, it was assumed that someone else had to become poor. But with the rise of scientific discovery and technological innovation, economies started to grow. New industries appeared, and wealth increased. Nations that encouraged exploration and research saw their power expand rapidly. As scientific discoveries continued, the pace of change accelerated. In just a few centuries, humans went from believing in a static world to sending rockets into space. The discovery of ignorance was not just about admitting what was unknown, it was about realizing that knowledge could be pursued in a structured way. This realization continues to shape the modern world, as new questions lead to new discoveries, pushing humanity further than ever before. Chapter 15. The Marriage of Science and Empire. For thousands of years, people believed that the world was complete, with nothing truly new to discover. Knowledge was seen as something ancient, passed down by wise ancestors. But then a great shift happened. In a new age of exploration, people began to question their past assumptions. They realized that the world was far larger than they had imagined, filled with unknown lands, uncharted oceans, and untold mysteries. With this realization, they saw ignorance not as a burden but as an opportunity. If the world held secrets yet to be uncovered, then seeking knowledge could lead to power. As European nations set sail to explore the world, they understood that knowledge was not just about understanding, it was about control. New discoveries could bring wealth and military strength. This belief led to an alliance between science and empire. Rulers funded voyages not just for conquest but to gather information. Mapmakers, astronomers, and botanists joined expeditions alongside soldiers and merchants. They measured new lands, recorded the plants and animals they found, and studied local cultures, all to help their governments prepare to rule over these territories. One of the most striking examples was the voyage of James Cook, sent by the British government. Cook was tasked with exploring the Pacific, officially to study the movement of Venus across the sun, a scientific mission. But beneath this purpose was another goal: to claim new land for Britain. As he sailed, he carefully mapped coastlines and identified regions that could be valuable for trade and settlement. His discoveries helped Britain expand its empire, proving that science was not just about knowledge, it was a tool for domination. This connection between science and empire grew stronger over time. Nations realized that to rule effectively, they needed to understand their colonies. They studied local crops to improve agriculture, explored medical treatments to protect their soldiers from diseases, and researched languages to govern more easily. This scientific approach allowed them to maintain control over vast populations. In India, for example, the British collected detailed information about the land, climate, and people. They conducted surveys, mapped villages, and gathered economic data. This knowledge made it easier to tax the people, manage trade, and suppress uprisings. The Industrial Revolution deepened this bond. Factories required raw materials like cotton, rubber, and oil. European scientists studied ways to extract these resources more efficiently. Railroads were built with precise engineering to transport goods quickly. Scientific advances in weapons gave European armies an advantage over less technologically advanced nations. The gap between the rulers and the ruled widened as scientific progress favored those who controlled it. The desire for knowledge led to breathtaking discoveries. Scientists uncovered the secrets of the human body, the laws of physics, and the chemistry of materials. But these discoveries were not separate from empire, they were fueled by it. Governments funded research that would benefit their expansion, from better navigation tools to improved medicine. Even archaeology was influenced, as Europeans dug through ancient ruins in search of artifacts, often removing them from their original lands and placing them in museums. Not all discoveries were used for conquest. Some knowledge was shared with the world, leading to medical breakthroughs and technological progress that helped people everywhere. But it was impossible to separate science from the forces that shaped it. Scientific research was not just a quest for truth, it was a means to an end, often serving the ambitions of those in power. This union of knowledge and empire changed the course of history. It shaped the modern world, creating both incredible advancements and deep inequalities. The pursuit of knowledge, once seen as a noble goal, had become a key part of global domination. Those who controlled science controlled the future, and those left behind struggled to catch up. Chapter 16. The Capitalist Creed. For most of history, people lived under the belief that wealth was limited. If one person became rich, it was assumed that someone else must have lost wealth. This idea shaped how societies worked, with kings, emperors, and nobles fighting to control land, gold, and other resources. But everything changed when people began to see the world differently. They started believing that wealth was not fixed, that it could grow. This belief became the foundation of the modern economy. The transformation began when merchants, bankers, and explorers started borrowing money to fund large ventures. In the past, lending was seen as risky because there was no guarantee that money could be repaid. But as people became more confident that the future would bring more opportunities, they were willing to take risks. Banks started lending more, businesses expanded, and trade routes connected different parts of the world. This new way of thinking led to the birth of capitalism, where trust in economic growth became the key to progress. Countries that embraced this idea quickly became powerful. European nations, in particular, began exploring distant lands in search of new resources. They took huge loans from banks to build ships, send out explorers, and establish colonies. These expeditions were expensive and dangerous, but the possibility of new wealth made them worthwhile. When traders returned with gold, spices, and other valuable goods, they proved that investing in the unknown could bring great rewards. This created a cycle. Banks lent money, businesses grew, governments collected more taxes, and economies flourished. As this system spread, the world saw the rise of stock markets. Instead of just borrowing from banks, businesses could now raise money by selling shares to investors. People who had never been involved in trade could now invest in companies and share their profits. This allowed businesses to grow faster than ever before. The Dutch were among the first to use this method effectively. The Dutch East India Company became one of the most powerful corporations, controlling trade across the oceans. Investors poured their money into the company, trusting that they would earn more in the future. This was one of the first examples of how capitalism turned trust into wealth. With capitalism came the idea that success depended not just on land or resources but also on innovation. Scientific discoveries and technological advancements became more valuable than gold. In the past, rulers had spent their wealth on building castles and waging wars, but now they started investing in industries, research, and new machines. Factories replaced small workshops, and goods that once took months to make could now be produced in days. This rapid development changed how people lived, worked, and even thought about the future. Governments also played a role in supporting this system. Instead of just taxing citizens, they started borrowing money from them. Bonds were introduced, allowing people to lend money to their own governments in exchange for future returns. This gave governments the funds to build roads, armies, and industries. In return, the economy grew, and investors made profits. This strengthened the belief that economic growth was not just possible but necessary. But capitalism was not without its problems. As businesses expanded, they needed more raw materials, leading to exploitation. European powers took control of vast lands in Africa, Asia, and the Americas, using them for resources and labor. Many local populations suffered as a result. However, the argument used to justify the system was that economic growth would eventually benefit everyone. People were told that, even if they suffered in the short term, their children or grandchildren would have a better life. This way of thinking continues to shape the modern world. Today, almost every country believes in economic growth. Governments, banks, and corporations all operate on the idea that the future will be better than the present. This belief has fueled incredible progress, from technological breakthroughs to higher living standards. However, it has also led to new challenges, as endless growth comes with environmental and social costs. Chapter 17. The Wheels of Industry. The modern world was shaped by an extraordinary transformation, the rise of industry. For thousands of years, humans relied on agriculture, animals, and simple tools to sustain their way of life. But then something changed. People began harnessing new sources of energy, inventing machines, and creating factories that could produce goods on a massive scale. This revolution did not happen overnight. It was the result of discoveries, economic shifts, and social changes that reshaped every aspect of human existence. For most of history, energy came from muscles, wind, or water. This limited what people could build and how much work they could do. But with the discovery of coal and steam power, things changed dramatically. The steam engine allowed factories to run without relying on rivers for energy. This meant that industries could grow in new places, leading to the rise of industrial cities. The production of goods no longer depended on skilled artisans working slowly by hand. Machines could now do the work faster and more efficiently, producing large quantities of textiles, tools, and other essential goods. As industry expanded, transportation needed to keep up. Railroads and steamships revolutionized how people and products moved across the world. Travel that once took months by foot or horse could now be done in days. Markets became global, connecting distant parts of the world like never before. Raw materials could be transported to factories with ease, and finished products could reach customers far away. This new speed of commerce changed economies and encouraged rapid urbanization, as people left rural areas in search of work in booming industrial centers. Factories created new kinds of jobs, but they also changed how people lived and worked. In the past, most people were farmers, working their own land and following the rhythm of nature. Industrial labor was different. It required long hours, strict schedules, and repetitive tasks inside noisy, crowded factories. The idea of time itself changed. Instead of following the sun, workers followed the clock. They had to arrive at a fixed hour, work in a structured manner, and meet production targets set by factory owners. This shift led to a new way of organizing society, where efficiency and productivity became key values. Industrialization did not just change work, it changed daily life. More goods became available at lower prices, making them accessible to more people. Clothing, household items, and even food were produced on a larger scale, reducing costs and increasing variety. People now bought more than just the bare necessities. Mass production allowed for new consumer habits, where individuals could define themselves by what they owned. Shopping became an important activity, and advertisements encouraged people to desire more. With industrialization came new challenges. The rapid growth of cities led to overcrowding, pollution, and poor living conditions for many workers. Streets filled with smoke from factories, rivers became polluted with waste, and diseases spread quickly in densely packed neighborhoods. Governments and businesses had to find ways to manage these problems. Over time, reforms were introduced to improve housing, sanitation, and worker rights. Laws were created to regulate labor conditions, reducing child labor and ensuring safer workplaces. As industries expanded, they also shaped politics and global relations. Countries that industrialized quickly gained military and economic advantages. They could produce better weapons, build stronger economies, and dominate trade. Industrial powers competed for resources and markets, leading to conflicts and colonization. The need for raw materials drove countries to expand into new territories, exploiting natural resources and reshaping local economies around the world. Despite the challenges, the impact of industrialization was undeniable. It led to unprecedented economic growth, scientific progress, and technological innovation. Medicine improved, reducing death rates and increasing life expectancy. Communication advanced with inventions like the telegraph and telephone, connecting people across long distances. Education expanded as societies recognized the need for a literate and skilled workforce. Chapter 18. A Permanent Revolution. The world is constantly changing, and the speed of change has increased dramatically over the past few centuries. Before modern times, people lived in societies that remained mostly the same for thousands of years. Farmers grew the same crops as their ancestors, craftsmen used the same tools, and rulers followed traditions set long before their reigns. Life was predictable, even if it was hard. People were born into a way of life that they expected to continue for generations. But in the last few hundred years, everything has shifted. Science, industry, and capitalism have created a world where change is the only constant. Old ways of living have been replaced by new inventions, new ideologies, and new economic structures. No one knows what the future will bring, and societies are constantly adapting to new realities. This never-ending transformation affects every aspect of life, from how people work to how they interact with each other. One major force behind this constant revolution is the connection between science and economic growth. In the past, progress was slow because people did not invest in new knowledge or technology. Now, scientific research and technological innovation are deeply linked to economic success. Governments and businesses pour resources into discovering new things, knowing that breakthroughs can bring enormous profits. This creates a cycle where discoveries lead to new industries, which lead to further discoveries. The world is no longer shaped by ancient traditions but by the pursuit of knowledge and wealth. Another key factor is capitalism's dependence on endless growth. In earlier times, economies were relatively stable, and wealth was mostly limited. Today, growth is expected in every sector. If businesses and countries do not expand, they risk falling behind. This demand for continuous economic expansion drives constant innovation. Factories must produce more goods, companies must find new markets, and industries must adapt to changing technologies. The financial system is built on this principle. Banks lend money with the expectation of future profits, and stock markets rise and fall based on how much growth is predicted. Because of this, societies cannot afford to remain the same. They must always move forward, changing jobs, skills, and industries to keep up with the demands of a growing economy. Education and employment have also been transformed. In the past, a person could learn a single skill and use it for a lifetime. A blacksmith, farmer, or merchant could rely on their knowledge to sustain them for decades. Now, industries change so fast that people must constantly learn new things. What is valuable today may be useless tomorrow. This creates uncertainty but also pushes humanity toward continuous improvement. Schools and universities must prepare students not just with knowledge but with the ability to adapt to an unpredictable world. Lifelong learning is necessary, and those who cannot keep up with new skills risk being left behind. Another result of this continuous transformation is the weakening of old social structures. In traditional societies, family, religion, and community played a central role in people's lives. These institutions provided stability, guiding individuals through life with clear expectations. But as industries change, urbanization increases, and new technologies reshape communication, these old social bonds weaken. People move frequently, change jobs often, and form relationships in new ways. The rise of individualism means that more people make decisions for themselves rather than following cultural traditions. This can create greater personal freedom but also leaves many feeling disconnected from the past. This never-ending revolution also affects political systems. In older times, rulers and governments could expect their power to last for generations. Monarchies and empires controlled vast lands with relatively little change. Today, political structures are unstable. New ideologies rise and fall quickly, and governments must constantly adapt to shifting economic and social forces. The relationship between power and the people has changed, with citizens demanding more rights and faster responses to their needs. The combination of scientific advancement, economic growth, and social transformation has created a world where stability is no longer the norm. The future is unpredictable, and societies must continually adapt to survive. Chapter 19. And they lived happily ever after. For most of history, humans struggled to survive. People fought wars, suffered from diseases, and faced hunger. Now things have changed. Today, there's more food than ever before, medicine can cure deadly diseases, and technology has made life easier. But does that mean people are happier? If survival was once the biggest challenge, then happiness should have followed after conquering hunger, war, and sickness. Yet that does not seem to be the case. Many believe happiness comes from wealth, success, or material comfort. But studies show that once basic needs are met, extra money does not bring much more joy. A person living in a small house with enough food can be just as happy as a billionaire. People always want more, believing that new goals, achievements, or possessions will make them satisfied. But as soon as one desire is fulfilled, another takes its place. This endless chase never truly leads to lasting happiness. Happiness is deeply connected to biology. Feelings of joy or sadness are caused by chemicals in the brain. When someone wins a lottery, their happiness spikes, but after a while, it returns to normal. The same happens with sadness. After a painful event, the brain slowly adjusts, and life goes on. This means that external events, whether good or bad, do not permanently change how happy a person feels. Each individual has a set level of happiness controlled by their body, and it always pulls them back to that state. Some believe happiness is about finding meaning in life. Religion, family, relationships, and personal goals give people a sense of purpose. In the past, religion played a big role in shaping happiness. It provided answers to deep questions and gave comfort in difficult times. Today, some turn to science, self-improvement, or personal passions to find meaning. However, meaning itself is also a human invention. A dog does not ask about the purpose of life. A tree does not worry about its future. Only humans constantly question their existence, looking for something greater than survival. One of the biggest challenges to happiness is expectations. If a person expects life to be perfect, they will always be disappointed. If they compare themselves to others, they will always feel lacking. Ancient humans lived in small tribes, comparing themselves only to a few people. Modern society, with social media and global news, exposes people to millions of others, making them feel small or unsuccessful in comparison. Happiness becomes harder when expectations rise faster than reality can meet them. There are many methods people use to increase happiness. Meditation trains the mind to focus on the present rather than worrying about the past or future. It helps in controlling emotions, making people less affected by sudden joys or sadness. Some cultures believe happiness is found in accepting life as it is, without constantly seeking more. Others believe in improving society, reducing suffering, and helping others to create a better world. No single answer exists, and different people find happiness in different ways. While medicine has cured many diseases, suffering has not disappeared. People now struggle with mental health, stress, and anxiety more than ever before. The modern world has removed many dangers but created new challenges. The human brain, designed for survival in nature, now faces artificial environments, fast-paced lifestyles, and constant distractions. These changes have made it harder for people to feel at peace. With science advancing rapidly, some believe that in the future, happiness might be controlled completely. Drugs, brain implants, or genetic modifications could eliminate sadness forever. But would that be a good thing? If humans never experienced struggle, would happiness still have meaning? Throughout history, pain and hardship have been part of life. Without them, people may lose the ability to appreciate joy. Despite all the progress, happiness remains a mystery. Humans have conquered the world, reshaped nature, and built incredible cities, but they still search for something more. The future may bring new solutions, but the questions remain the same. What truly makes a person happy? Is it something to be found, or something that must be created from within? The answer might not lie in changing the world, but in understanding the mind itself. Chapter 20. The End of Homo Sapiens. For hundreds of thousands of years, Homo sapiens have been the dominant species on Earth, shaping the environment, conquering diseases, and building civilizations. But now, an even bigger change is on the horizon. The future will not be shaped by natural evolution, but by intelligent design. Humans are no longer subject to the slow and random forces of natural selection. Instead, they're learning to manipulate biology, rewrite DNA, and merge with technology. Gene engineering is already changing the way life is created. Scientists can edit genes to eliminate diseases, select physical traits, and even influence behavior. In laboratories, embryos are being modified before birth, raising the possibility of a future where parents choose their children's intelligence, height, or athletic ability. This means that natural evolution, which once depended on random mutations, is now being replaced by deliberate choices. If some groups gain access to superior genetic modifications while others do not, the gap between the privileged and the disadvantaged may widen in ways never seen before. The idea of equality, which has been central to modern societies, may become meaningless if the biological differences between people become too great. At the same time, artificial intelligence is rapidly advancing. Machines are not only performing manual labor, but are now surpassing humans in tasks requiring intelligence and creativity. Algorithms can analyze medical data better than doctors, write music, and even make investment decisions. As these technologies improve, they may replace humans in countless professions. Millions of people could become irrelevant in the job market, with little to contribute to the economy. The idea that work gives life meaning may no longer hold true in a world where machines perform better in almost every field. Beyond genetics and artificial intelligence, another powerful force is at play: the merging of human minds with technology. Scientists are developing brain-computer interfaces that allow thoughts to be transmitted directly to machines. This could lead to a future where people can communicate without speaking, store memories outside their brains, and even share emotions directly. If such technology becomes widely available, the human experience itself may change. A person's thoughts and identity might no longer be limited to their physical body, blurring the line between human and machine. If humans can change their biology and merge with artificial intelligence, what will happen to the species as it exists today? The abilities that once made Homo sapiens unique, language, memory, reasoning, may no longer set them apart. New beings, whether enhanced humans or entirely synthetic minds, could emerge. These beings might be smarter, stronger, and more efficient, making unmodified Homo sapiens obsolete. If that happens, the future may belong to a species that is no longer human in the way people understand today. For thousands of years, people have believed that suffering, disease, and death are an unchangeable part of life. But if technology can eliminate these problems, what will humans strive for? If aging can be reversed and minds can be preserved forever, will people still find meaning in their lives? Many of the stories that have guided civilizations, religion, morality, and purpose were built on the idea that life is temporary. If humans become immortal, the very foundations of culture may shift. The changes happening now are unlike anything in the past. For the first time, humans are shaping their own evolution, deciding what kind of beings will inherit the earth. Whether this leads to a utopia of limitless potential or a future where Homo sapiens are replaced by something else remains uncertain. The real question is not just what people will become, but whether they will still be human at all. As we wrap up this mind-bending dive into sapiens, remember, our past isn't set in stone, it's a story we can rewrite. If this sparked your curiosity about humanity's wild ride, hit that like button, subscribe for more epic book summaries, and dive into our other audiobooks on evolution, philosophy, and world-changing ideas. Don't miss out. Your next favorite listen is just a click away. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.